Hello. Today is Thursday of the third week in Advent. We have 3 candles lit. That third one's not very bright, is it? And we are continuing the story of Bartholomew's passage. Today's chapter is titled Discipline. Jotham looked at Nathan, who nodded and then stripped off his tunic. Before wading into the water, he tested it with his toe. He pulled his toe out again, examined it closely, saw that it was not dead, and then stepped into the water. As soon as he was waist deep, he floated up off the bottom of the lake and fell backward. Splashing and gagging, he sputtered, "What's happening?" Bartholomew and the other boys laughed, having gone through this themselves the first time. "It's the salt in the water," Bartholomew said as Jotham finally paddled himself upright. "There are so many grains of salt in the water that they stack up on top of each other and won't let you sink." It was a perfectly logical explanation, and Bartholomew was quite sure it was true, even if he had made it up himself. Jotham just stared into the water for a moment and then shook his head. The other boys taught Jotham how to play Dunk the Donkey, and he got pretty good at it, at being the donkey and being dunked, though the object of the game was to not be the donkey and not get dunked. Then the boys floated on their backs, allowing the thick water to hold them up, and they rested in the sun. "I have to leave tomorrow," Jotham said sadly. Bartholomew upended himself with a splash and twisted around to look his friend in the face. "Leave? Why would you want to leave?" "I must go find my family," Jotham answered. "But you don't know where your family is. You said they are lost and could be anywhere." "This is true, but they do not know I am alive, and if I do not look for them, we will never find each other." Bartholomew was sad and lay back down in the water. "I will miss you, Jotham of Jericho," he said. "And I you," Jotham answered. "But I will visit you again as soon as I find my family and we travel this way." Bartholomew didn't talk as the boys climbed out of the water. Then they rinsed off in a pool just inside the gate. He thought it strange when he saw the rabbi's assistant gallop out of the compound on a horse and head in the direction that Decca had taken, but he was too distracted to think much of it. He was still silent as he pulled on his tunic a few minutes later. "Are you sad?" Jotham asked. Bartholomew's jaw moved back and forth a few times, and his lips were closed tight. "I'm angry," he finally said. "Angry at me?" "No," Bartholomew answered. "I'm angry at God, because everything that is important to me keeps being taken away." "How can you be angry at God?" Jotham asked. "Will he not strike you dead?" Bartholomew turned his head away. "Sometimes I do not care," he said. Jotham waited a time and then asked, "What happened to your family?" Bartholomew was quiet for a long moment as they walked toward the dining hall, and then he said, "It started one afternoon as I was drying my father's nets." A short time later, the 2 boys had washed their hands and were waiting to enter the dining room as Bartholomew finished his story. "Then Nathan brought me here to Qumran, and I guess this is where I will stay until I am a man, unless the rabbi's assistant has his way." "And do you think God stole your family from you?" Bartholomew sighed. "No, not really. But sometimes I get mad, and I don't know who to get mad at except God and the Romans." Everyone was entering the dining hall and taking their places now, and Bartholomew knew that as a visitor, Jotham would have to sit at the end of the last table with the sons of Dan. He looked around and spotted Nathan. Wait here, he told Jotham, and then went over to his mentor. Nathan, he whispered, may I sit in my old place to keep company with Jotham of Jericho? Nathan frowned. Such a thing would be most unusual. An Essene does not give up his place of birthright for any reason. Such an act might cause a great disturbance among the people. Then Nathan smiled widely and whispered, Of course you may do it. Bartholomew grinned back and then led Jotham to the place of visitors and sat with him. As dinner was served and consumed, Nathan began reading a lesson about the Messiah being from the line of Judah. Suddenly, Bartholomew's curiosity tickled him. Leaning over to Jotham, he whispered, What line are you from? What? Was Jotham's reply. I said, What line are you from? Bartholomew whispered again. Jotham looked puzzled. I don't think I'm from any line. This caught Bartholomew completely off guard, and he let out a loud laugh and exclaimed, You have to be from some line. Instantly, Bartholomew realized his mistake. Everyone had stopped eating and was silently staring at him. Forgive me, Nathan, he said lamely. I was just trying to make our new friend feel welcome. The rabbi looked at Bartholomew with a sour lemon face. I shall speak with you after the meal, Bartholomew, he said. Bartholomew nodded. He sat glumly through the rest of dinner, wondering what his fate would be. It didn't take long to find out. As soon as the meal was over, the rabbi took Bartholomew by the ear and led him to the shed where wood for the cook fires was stored. Bartholomew, he said with the same voice Bartholomew's father had used when he did something wrong, I have warned you many times about your outbursts during meals. I must now take a more drastic measure to help you remember. With that, the rabbi swung Bartholomew over his knee and spanked him. But unlike in Caesarea, this time the punishment was real, and Bartholomew didn't have to pretend to cry. When he was done, the rabbi set Bartholomew back on his feet and held him by his shoulders. Never forget, Bartholomew, that a man must live by the rules of the community or face the consequences. Then, letting loose of the boy, he said, You may go now. Bartholomew was halfway to the door when the rabbi called after him, Just a moment. Why were you not sitting in your rightful place tonight? After explaining to the rabbi, Bartholomew went into the compound where he found Jotham standing with a blank look on his face. Bartholomew was still sniffling as he said, The rabbi wanted to make sure I remembered not to talk during teachings. Jotham just looked at him dumbly, as if he hadn't heard a word. I am related to the Messiah, he said softly, as if he had seen an angel. Bartholomew just laughed, although softly. No, you're not, he said. Jotham nodded his head quickly. Yes, I am. Nathan told me this thing. Bartholomew stopped laughing. But how can that be? The Messiah is God. No one can be related to God. The Messiah will be from the line of Judah, as I am, Jotham exclaimed. And then, seeing that his friend did not understand, he asked, Did you not listen to the lesson tonight? Bartholomew lowered his eyes to the ground. Well, most of it. But you did not hear the part where the Messiah will be born from the line of Judah? Jotham asked, and then before his friend could answer, he added, What line are you from? I am from the line of David, Bartholomew answered quickly, glad to be on a different subject. But I don't really know what that means. Jotham just stared at his friend for a moment. It means, he whispered finally, that you are my brother. Discipline is a word, well, it's a word we don't like very much. As children, our parents discipline us to teach us how to behave and how to be responsible. As adults, God disciplines us for the same reasons. But how can a loving God discipline his children? Shouldn't he be kind to us and give us all we need? Being kind to a child or an adult doesn't mean giving them everything they want and letting them behave however they'd like. What we need is to know that following God's way is the only safe way through this life. Like a parent who spanks a child for running out into the road, God sees the terrible dangers we face, and he knows that if he doesn't discipline us for the small transgressions we make, the big ones just might kill us. Just as that parent loves the child enough to train him to be safe, God loves us enough to do the same thing for us. In Proverbs it says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father the son he delights in." Of course, we always have the choice of simply doing what is right to begin with, so that no lessons are necessary.